This is the Envision Math 4th grade addition and subtraction unit review that was created by Chelsea Masterson. A little bit about the students first. I have two 4th grade students, one male student and one female student. I teach resource level classes, and among the students are the following disabilities: discrepant cognitive functioning, developmental delay, ADHD, specific learning disabilities in the areas of math computation and math problem solving, speech and language disabilities, generalized anxiety disorder, and fine motor delays. The unit that I taught is Chapter 2 of the Envision Math series, and each lesson, as you can see, is listed here. Lesson 2-1 was using mental math to add and subtract, and these are the Common Core standards that go along with that. Those will be detailed in just a minute. Lesson 2-2, estimating sums and differences of whole numbers. 2-3 is adding whole numbers. 2-4, subtracting whole numbers. And 2-5, subtracting across zeros. These are the Common Core state standards that are addressed in this unit. Next are the I can statements. There are 11 I can statements in total. I know it seems like a lot, but this, as I said earlier, is a unit review, so it's not just one lesson that is being addressed here. So the first I can statement is I can add whole numbers mentally. Then I can subtract whole numbers mentally. I can round whole numbers to estimate sums. I can round whole numbers to estimate differences. I can add numbers to hundreds with regrouping. I can add numbers to the hundreds place without regrouping. I can add numbers to the thousands place with regrouping. I can add numbers to the thousands place without regrouping. I can subtract numbers to the thousands place with regrouping. I can subtract numbers to the thousands place without regrouping. And I can subtract numbers with zeros to the thousands. The performance task that I created is a Kahoot game. So for those unfamiliar with Kahoot, I'm going to exit the PowerPoint really quick and pull up the Kahoot that I created. So Kahoot is a website. It's free. You can log in and create an account, and then create different types of quizzes or games to play. So these are all ones that I've created before, but the Envision Math 4th grade Unit 2 is the one I created. I made it public, so if you have a Kahoot account and want to find it, this is where you'd search the name, and you can search it in the Find Kahoots right here. So that is my Kahoot. Oops, sorry, let me pull up our slides again. So the performance task I created has 13 questions in total. There's one question per I can statement, except 2 of them are repeated. And then the Kahoots in my case were completed on iPads, and the questions were projected onto my whiteboard from my teacher laptop. I teach at a Lutheran school, and because it is almost Christmas time, we're getting ready for Christmas, there are different schedules for reading and math classes every day in November and December, because the students are getting ready for their Christmas programs. So due to that, my teaching schedule class for math has been shortened. So I had to break the task into 2 days because there just wasn't enough time to get through all of the questions because I had a 30-minute math class when normally I have a 50-minute math class. So I had to break it into 2 days. Next, I showed screenshots of the rubric that I created, and I also included the link right here. So the link for that looks like this. So I had to kind of put one question on each page for my rubric. I know it seems very long, but that's how I could fit it best with the amount of detail needed. So students' questions from the Kahoot are listed, and the I can statement, and then the Common Core standard is listed as well. And then students are going to be assessed on their computation skill. Were they able to actually solve the question correctly? And then the explanation of their problem to their peer or to their teacher. Since I do only have 2 students, it is challenging sometimes to have group discussions because it's just me and 2 kids. So those are screenshots of all of the questions from my rubric. I'm going to jump back to the performance task really quick. So how I addressed the performance task is each student was given a whiteboard, like a little personal one for their desk, as well as a whiteboard marker and a tissue as an eraser. Then they were also given their iPad, and the iPad has the question and the answer choices. That's how they submit their answer digitally. However, they are given their whiteboard and whiteboard marker to solve the problem, do their work on the whiteboard. So I forgot to mention that earlier, and that's really important to the structure of the performance task. So a student sees the question pop up on the Kahoot, they solve it on their whiteboard, and then they mark their correct answer or their answer choice in the Kahoot app. Each Kahoot question is 2 minutes, so it's 120 seconds. That is the max amount of time that they can have per question as well. So once again, those are my rubric slides. So then here are my results. So because I had to break this into 2 different days, that's why you're only going to see 7 out of 13 questions answered. So the nice thing about Kahoot is it will give you a breakdown of all of the questions and your students in a variety of ways. They actually give you a ton of data, which is really awesome. I am going to exit right now and show you how to find it on a Kahoot if you're unfamiliar. So I have my Kahoot here, and I'm just going to click on the one I created. This is for the one my students already completed. So we're going to wait for that to load. Then what you're going to do is click on these 3 little dots right here, and it says results. And so then it'll show you all of the quizzes and tests that, or Kahoots that you've ever done. And so I have one for the 28th and one for the 29th. So you can either hit download or save, or you can play again to try to beat your score. Or you can share the link, which is awesome to share the link with parents or colleagues or team members. So that's a great thing too. So you can always download the results. Alrighty, so those are my overviews from my 2 days. Then they also give you final scores for each student. This is day 1, this is day 2. Players get to put the cute little nickname for themselves in there. And then based on how many questions they get correct and how quickly they answer the question, the Kahoot game assigns them points and rankings. It just makes the game more fun for those kiddos who kind of thrive on being competitive. So it'll tell you how many answers they had correct and how many they had incorrect. So for both days. Then the next part is that you're given a question summary. So ignore these red ones down here for day 2. I had to skip past those questions, so they just marked them as like not answered, when really I wasn't going to waste my class time and have students repeat the same questions over. So we actually started right here. But we did, this was our day 1, and then we started right here for day 2. But it gives you a nice little summary of each question and whether they got it correct or not. So red is incorrect, green is correct. And then it'll list the student name over on the side and their score points and the rankings. So I zoomed in. It will actually give you a detailed question summary as well. So right here it says question 1. And the question was using mental math to add 86 plus 25. And then it'll tell you how many students answered each question. The green check mark means that that's the correct answer. So one of my students was able to answer that correctly. And then answer details down here, it'll give you the player details. So I know that this student was able to answer correctly and this one was not. And so then it'll also tell me how many points were awarded, their current score. And the really cool thing too is it'll tell me how long did it take them to answer it. For some of your kiddos that are very impulsive, I have some of those students my own self. That's kind of a good thing to look at. Were they just answering too quickly, or those students who were taking a lot of time to think about their answer? So the next slides, I just provided screenshots of the individual question summaries from each question in the Kahoot. And those are the next ones. That's 8 through 13. So that was day 2. Because the rubric was so long, for me, what I created was a rubric summary. It was just easier for me to mark down quickly, because my rubric, I made it into like a page per I can statement. It just, or question rather, it just was too lengthy. And it was difficult to mark that down quickly. So what I did is I created a rubric results summary page where I could quickly put a check mark or an X in the exceeds, meets, approaches, does not meet, or non-scorable section. So once again, each question had a computation and an explanation. So the other thing you'll notice is right here, if there's a little note, that's when the result in the summary that I created here will look different than the result from the Kahoot data, only because of the issue that was noted on the summary. So what went well? I think that having the Kahoot increased student engagement and participation. It also increased academic dialogue. That is something that's very challenging for my special education students. Just using that academic language can be challenging. And then the next thing is their willingness to take educational risks in front of their peers. Often I find that with special education students, they are sadly so used to kind of not getting the answer correct that they sometimes don't want to participate because of the kind of social pressure or peer of their peers to look different or get an answer wrong. However, because they were so engaged, they were willing to kind of take some more educational risks than they otherwise would. Another thing about my class, just in general, is I've had these same students for many years. So, another factor of their willingness to take educational risks is they're very comfortable with having me as a teacher. My male student, this is my 4th year having him in my class, and then my female student, this is my 2nd year having her in my class. So, kind of some challenges that I went through. The internet connection at my school, sometimes we lose internet connection, or sometimes it takes a long time for it to load. This was something that did happen to one of my students where a little error message popped up in the middle of her quiz. She did the math correctly on her whiteboard, but because of her internet connection error, she was not able to mark the question on the Kahoot correctly. So therefore, she got a question wrong in the Kahoot data, but really she got it correct. So that is why one of the reasons why my little summary of the rubric looks different than the Kahoot data. Oops, sorry. The other thing is sometimes students add correctly, but they don't choose the correct answer in the tablet. So they did their math right, and then especially my student who has fine motor delays, even just clicking the correct button on the screen, he clicked the wrong answer, even though he did the work correctly, and that was kind of frustrating for him. The next thing is because part of this Kahoot is me checking their work on their whiteboard to see what errors they made and be able to discuss that with them and with their peers. Sometimes my impulsive students will want to erase their work too quickly. And then they're like, oh man, I erased my work. I didn't get through it the way that I wanted to be able to show you. And I was like, that was a bit of a frustration for them, as just their impulsiveness to want to erase too quickly. The next thing, an accommodation that I did need to provide, is my student that does have pretty severe fine motor delays. Just copying the problem down from the Kahoot onto the whiteboard to solve it, that takes him so long to do that the Kahoot time would run out before he would even have time to solve the problem on his whiteboard. Unfortunately, with a Kahoot, you're limited to a maximum of 120 seconds or 2 minutes. So an accommodation that I provided for him is I would click start on the Kahoot question, and I'd go straight to his desk and write the problem for him, and then he would solve it. That helped reduce speed, or it helped increase speed for him, but reduce the frustration. The only thing that's challenging about that is that I'm lining up the problem for him, and so therefore I don't know I can't say definitively if he knows how to line up the problem to solve it. And then, like I stated earlier, because there are different schedules at Christmas time, I have shorter class periods. And so, therefore, I had to break my performance task into 2 class periods instead of 1, which was not ideal. Then, for next steps, I created this kind of guide, and I used this scale considering if each Kahoot question was 1 point per se, whether or not I would need to do some reteaching with those students. So my student Carson was able to get 8 out of 13, which would mean he'd need a little bit of additional reteaching. And then my student Ava was able to score 10 out of 13, so she may need some minimal reteaching just to kind of review. Like I said earlier, this Kahoot was done at the end of a unit prior to formal test assessment. Alrighty, and that is it.